trying to trample over me, but he is one that is sacrificially caring for me, sacrificially loving me. I want to suggest to you that this is an all-important balance in the marriage relationship as God designed it to be. Often when I am dealing with oversight visits, the way in which I ask the question is quite simple. I turn to the husband or wife, let me begin with the wife this time, and simply ask the question, does your husband love you with tender loving care? And then I say, feel free to add but. So the wife will say, yeah, he loves me with tender loving care, but, and then she adds something else. I wish she could do this. And I often say, that's the homework for the man. In other words, just make sure that in your marriage, the words after the but continue to diminish and diminish and diminish and diminish, because ultimately there should be no but if you are doing your job well. And then I turn to the man and I say, does your wife submit to your leadership in the home? And then I see a man sort of go like this. And then, of course, he realizes that if I say no, I'll be in serious trouble here. So he finally says, yes, but, and then he adds the extras. And that extra is the work that the wife has to handle going forward. I do want to assure you, brethren, and I've been married long enough, I've been a pastor long enough to say this, that where each one concentrates on the words after the but, you will have a healthy marriage going forward. You have a healthy marriage going forward. That's God's design for this relationship. The problem that Adam had before having a wife was precisely the absence of a suitable helper. We see it at the end of verse 20. Back to Genesis and chapter 2. We see it at the end of verse 20. The man gave names to all livestock, and to the birds of the heavens, and to every beast of the field. But for Adam, there was not found a helper fit for him. That's where the frustration was. He was enjoying naming animals, but the animals were not a fit replacement for a wife. There is need for partnership. But secondly, there is need for pleasure. And this is pleasure in the context of love. The context of love. You can't miss it back in Genesis chapter 2. You can't miss it from the words that were coming out of Adam's lips. But even before the words, it's the way in which God uses the picture language of a rib from the man. Verse 21. So the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man, and while he slept, took one of his ribs and closed up its place with flesh. And the rib that the Lord God had taken from the man, he made into a woman and brought her to the man. It's interesting that even in a physical sense, the rib is the closest part of a person's skeleton to the heart. God deliberately gets that part to form the woman that is going to be part of this man's life. And then also, again, when you think about it, those of you who are already feeling cold here, you are like this, isn't it? You know, you're keeping warm by embracing your actual ribs. Nobody has told you to do it, but it's almost instinctive when you are in cold weather. I think God was saying something to us by using the picture language here. This is not an accident. He did not use a femur from the thigh because it's a strong bone in order to create the woman. He used a rib. And it's not a bone that is from the skull. It's not a bone that is from the feet. It's a bone that is somewhere in the middle, showing again something of a sense of companionship even there that is to be enjoyed in the marriage relationship. But then, as he brings her to the man, look at the way the man responds. Then the man said, "This at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man." It is the first song that we have in the whole Bible, at least out of the lips of a human being. And it is not when Adam is relating to the animals around him. It is not while Adam is relating to the vegetation around him. It's not even while Adam is enjoying probably very tasty food from the garden. But it is when he sights the woman that he breaks forth into this song. At last, here is bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. There is romance that has immediately been introduced into the context of this person's life. And that's not an accident. It is the very way in which God has made us as human beings. He's made us in such a way that what he wants us to fulfill is something we enjoy to do. So, for instance, whatever career you might have chosen for your life, I am sure it wasn't simply that it pays well, but it was also that this is something I enjoy doing. It's the same thing with food. God deliberately put taste buds, B-U-D-S, on our tongues so that we can enjoy the food that we eat. And that's why it's so difficult to eat when you are sick, because your taste buds simply fail to do their job, and you hate the process of eating. It's the same thing with marriage. God has done it in such a way that romance is an integral aspect of marriage. When your child begins to go through teenage years, suddenly the members of the opposite sex become very important to them, very important. You know, I've never forgotten the disappointment I once had. I used to sort of bring clothing for my children whenever I would go abroad, and then coming to give these, what I thought were good clothes, to our sons, and one of them said, "Dad, I can't put this on." I said, "Why?" "The girls will laugh at me." So I thought, when did girls become more important to you than me? Okay, so things change along the way. Members of the opposite sex become more important than you, dad and mom, whether you like it or not. That's why they even abandon your home to go and get married. Doesn't matter how nice your home might be. It is because there is this pleasure in love that makes up marriage. It's the way God designed it to be. God made us male and female, and part of the pleasure is in sex itself. It is the way in which God made that relationship. And so we must never forget that. We see it in the statement, a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave or hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. One flesh. The one flesh union. Sex is meant to be the climax of the pleasure that is meant only for the marriage relationship. So there's partnership and there is pleasure. And by the way, before we move away from pleasure, it's incredible, but it's true, isn't it? That some of the best songs that are ever created by human beings are about marriage, rather about love, about romance. It's incredible, but it's true. Children will be going through nursery rhymes and so on, and Jack and Jill did this and that and so on. But when they get into their teenage years, somehow the nursery rhymes, they now want to sing about Chigelo, and so that becomes the topic of the songs. They invent songs specifically, or poems specifically for that loved one. Again, God intended it to be so. The third aspect that maybe before I get into that, because I've already begun verse 24, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife. I think it's important in dealing with that text to emphasize that the nature of God's design for marriage is that it is an exclusive relationship. An exclusive relationship. It is one that overrides the relationship that was there between a child and his parents. It gets into first position. And one of the ways in which this has particularly struck me is at funerals of a person who has died. The way in which they make it clear as to who will be the first person to lay the wreath. They make it clear. It's not the parents. Doesn't matter how big they are in society. It's always the spouse who lays the first wreath. And even in the state, when the person has died and they're now dealing with the estate of the one who has died, they don't begin with the parents. Even if the person did not leave a will, they begin with the spouse. Because the person left father and mother to begin a new unit, an independent unit within society. It is in the design that God has placed in the marriage relationship. But what it also means is that this living and cleaving includes girlfriends and boyfriends. It's an exclusive relationship in that sense. And it's been added to our wedding vows, isn't it? When we say, forsaking all others and clinging only to him or to her, as long as both of us shall live. It's in the DNA of the marriage relationship. that it must be monogamous. Now, we can ask questions about the polygamous nature of marriages in the Old Testament, but we definitely can't miss it here, because God did not bring Eve to Adam and then throw in Stella and Jane as well as a bonus. It was one woman that he gave him, and that was it. You don't read, even later as you go forward, you don't read that Adam began to accumulate a few more wives. So the exclusiveness has to do with the living and cleaving. It is 2 is company, 3 is a crowd. Let me also add very quickly here that the cleaving is permanent. It's for life. Seriously, for life. And later on, when we'll come to deal with the issues of marriage ending up in misery and divorce, this is where the crux of the matter lie. This is where the testing comes in, because of these causes that are bringing a strain in the marriage relationship. And for you to be able to see that in the very definition of marriage, it's meant to be for life. The words that I talked about earlier, forsaking all others, clinging only to him or her, as long as both of us shall live. We speak about contracts when we're getting into employment, and there's no guilty feeling when you throw in your letter of resignation to your employers to go and start working somewhere else. I've quit my job once in my entire lifetime, and it was from mining, and I've never forgotten after I put in my resignation, being called into my manager's office. And as we sat to talk, he never, ever felt betrayed. Not at all. He just could not understand why I was leaving this job to go and be pastor of a church. He thought there was a mental problem. But there was no sense. I mean, he sort of was showing me my line of progression, where I was now and where I was going to be, and the kind of salary scales that were going to come. But there's no sense that you've done something wrong. It's just trying to entice you to change your mind. Because it's a contract, and the contract can come to an end. Marriage is a covenant. It's a lifelong covenant. To try and end it is a betrayal. There's something wrong. It's supposed to end with blood, with death at the end, and not something that is stopping in between. So this cleaving here that we are seeing in our text, holding fast to his wife, not just holding, but holding fast to his wife, it's meant to be until death parts us. It's an organic union rather than a mechanical one, where you can just unscrew the nuts that are there and then separate the two and then join another one. No, this is meant to be organic, so that it is literally a cutting off that happens when a person dies. And that's the reason why it mustn't happen when they're still alive. Well, the last part is procreation, and it is also hinted within here. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. But if we cross over to chapter 4, we will come to chapter 3 in the second session. But when we cross over to chapter 4, we read this. Now Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. And again, meaning Adam knew his wife again, she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, while Cain a worker of the ground. Notice the product of this sexual union that is taking place there. And it is procreation. Procreation. It is, by God's design, the vehicle that he has provided for not only bringing human beings into the world, but it is also the vehicle that God has provided for nurturing the children into this world, bringing them to adulthood. That the man and the woman function like a left and a right hand together in order to properly bring up the children. There's a way in which the role of the woman can never be replaced by a man. Even in today's crazy sort of homosexual world, that's obvious that they are having to mechanically temper with the way in which we are made. I mean, only a woman has a uterus in which the baby is going to be for 9 months. Try as you might as a man, forget it. Only a woman has nursing breasts that are going to again play that role of providing a well-balanced diet to a baby through just one regular liquid that is being offered to the baby. And it goes beyond that. There is a sensitivity that women have that we men just don't have with respect to temperature in the home, for instance. Us men, everything is okay. And then the woman arrives and says, it's hot in here. So, you're opening windows, stuffy, and so on. And baby must be feeling cold here. There's need for more clothing. The man is just totally surprised about all this. It's just the way God has made us. He's made us so that we can play those different roles. And then when it comes to the issue of discipline, again, we know how we easily differ as husband and wife, because the man is the natural disciplinarian. He is able to keep his emotions inside there while he's dealing with disciplinary matters. And it's not just in terms of the action, it's even in terms of the voice. Because the man's voice is like a lion. He just says, stop it, and the children know that beyond this statement, the world will be bad. And whereas the mother, they can do rounds around her, and they are continuing doing rounds and so forth. So it's a whole detail in itself, but it is definitely worth underscoring that the two play those kinds of roles. The man is the primary breadwinner. The woman is the primary bread maker. And that does not mean the woman cannot work outside the home. It is simply, where is our primary role? So there's no doubt about that. God has wired us in such a way that we are able together as a left and a right hand to not just bring children into the home, into the world, but to nurture them and to raise them. Well, my 45 minutes are over. I will end here and hand over to our brother, the song leader. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pastor Mbewe, for that. I believe we have learned a lot and checking ourselves where we are doing well and where there are opportunities for improvement for those of us who are married, but also if you are not in that case, where our understanding may have been challenged. Okay, so as per our program, we're supposed to break for tea, but there's a slight delay from our contracted person to bring the snacks. So we can do group work and a short break, and then we'll come into session 2, then we can have our snacks after session 2. Is that okay? Okay, thank you so much. So Deacon Kawamba, is he nearby? I can't see him in the hall. Okay. Yes. Nathan, what gift of grace? Do you have it nearby? Okay. All right, no, it's fine. He's here. So he's here. So you can just guide us on how we are doing the groups and who is going where, and the questions that people are discussing, and then we'll be guided. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. All right, at this stage, we'll break up in 2 groups so that we can do some group discussions. We're going to go by the physical presence. So we'll just quickly do a count, 1 up to 4. What we have discovered is that the people are registered. Most of them are not here physically. So we'll deal with you present physically. So we'll do a count 1 up to 4, then we'll split into groups. Each group is going to have a leader who will take down the points that you'll discuss, and then we'll try and see how we can provide for some time to do some presentations of the points that you're going to raise in your group discussions. So to start, let me start from my right. We'll be counting 1 up to 4, okay? 4, okay? Okay. No, 2. 2, you. Okay. 3, okay. 4, okay. 4, yeah. 1. Okay. Okay. All right. 3, is it the one in the corner there? Okay. 4, all right. Just be loud, please. Yeah. Okay. Come on. Okay. 4, all right. Okay. Yeah, then 1, 2.